Welcome, my friends, to Dr. Frank, Cutting Edge Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Miller, coming to you from San Antonio, Texas. First of all, welcome to a new year. I think all of us are generally glad to see 2020 go, and we look forward to the promises of 2021. Today's topics will be COVID-19, ozone therapy, and the Prolon diets. But before we go further, I'd like to dedicate this show to the memory of Dr. Ed Staffel, who died 2 years ago. Dr. Staffel, as many of you listeners know, had a show here at KTSA for many years. He was a progressive, integrative dentist who was always searching for the latest innovations in dentistry and general health that could add to our quality of life. He had me on the show several times, and that's where I got the bug to someday do a similar show, and here we are. This show is Dr. Frank Cutting Edge Medicine, and that's what we intend to do. Bring you the latest in both traditional and complementary medicine for your better health and longevity. There are a few others I'd like to thank for giving me the opportunity to do this show. First, it is Sunday, and I'd like to start with God. Oh, great Spirit, sometimes we call you God, but often we just feel your presence in ourselves and others. Guide our discussions as we explore this amazing creation called the human being, so that we may bring peace and healing and fulfilling lives to the most people. And we ask all this through all the holy names of God. Amen. And the next person I'd like to thank is my uncle, Bill Miller, dentist, DDS. He's the one who, almost 8 years ago, after years of me being reluctant to learn anything besides standard medicine, took me to the first International Association of Ozone in Healthcare and Dentistry meeting in Las Vegas. He knew I liked Vegas, and that was the hook, but I was hooked after that with what they were doing. It was there that my eyes were opened, and now I can't stop trying to learn about the myriad of ways to help us achieve health and longevity. Then I want to thank all my staff at my regular office and all my patients who let me experiment on them in things that I learned from the conferences, and they trust me and let me try all those things, and that's what I'm able to bring to you today is 35 years of experience. And next, but certainly not least, I want to thank my wife of 41 years, Dr. Sherry Miller. She has been the more conservative balancer of all this, and like she says, if you can convince me, you can convince anyone. And lastly, we need to thank those who make this show possible, my staff at O3 Plus LLC. The clinic is run by an amazing nurse practitioner, Kim Engelman. Kim and I met about 5 years ago when I was starting to do ozone therapy in my regular office, and we needed a place to move it to off-site because we were getting too busy. She had been a family nurse practitioner for many years and was interested in branching out and learning a lot more about health, wellness, and longevity. And I told her, well, if we go to 3 conferences a year at least, you and I will be the smartest ones on all this stuff in San Antonio. And I firmly believe that she knows the most about ozone therapy in San Antonio. Our clinic opened about 5 years ago. We are at 12001 Network, number 314, San Antonio, Texas, 78255. You can reach us on the web at www.o3plustx.com. That's O3plustx.com. And that's where you can learn a lot more about the therapies that we do there. We'll talk about some of them later in the show today. Or you can call our phone number, 210-558-7778. That, again, is 210-558-7778 for O3 Plus. When you call, you will be greeted by one of the friendliest, most competent people I know, our receptionist and manager, Ms. Terry Lockey. The clinic support staff includes our nutrition specialist, Ms. Alicia Castro, and our IV specialist, Ms. Ashley Tovar. Okay, a couple of disclaimers. I will not be your doctor. The things we talk about are for thought and discussion and are not to be taken as medical advice. Please discuss any potential changes to your medical regimen with your doctor. Next, many of the things we talk about are not FDA approved. If we discuss supplements, they are not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent or cure any disease. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started. We're going to talk about COVID-19 first because that seems to be on everybody's mind. We get so many questions in our regular office about it. So let's talk about the basics. I think most of you know how they think that we can help prevent it by social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands. The reason for washing your hands is not so much that you spread it on the surfaces, but if you touch the surface and then touch your nose, it has to get into your respiratory tract. So that's the reason why a mask is a good idea, because it reminds you not to touch your face. Okay, so there are vaccines that are coming out, and I think you have heard about the different groups of the vaccines. There's a group 1A. 1A is the healthcare workers in hospitals, the high-risk people, the emergency room staff, but also included the long-term care staff, the EMS providers, home healthcare workers, and residents of long-term care facilities. So they already started that. Most of those people have gotten their first vaccine. And, depending on the vaccine, it could be you have to come back in 3 or 4 weeks for the second shot. So now they're talking about group 1B, which is where I'm getting all the phone calls. So those are 65 and older years old people, or anyone over 16 with pre-existing conditions that may make them more susceptible to the disease. That includes congestive heart failure, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, obesity, and organ transplant folks. If you include obesity, and San Antonio being one of the fattest cities in the country, that's just about the whole city. So we've had everybody trying to get in and get scheduled for a vaccine. Now, today, actually, in the newspaper this past week, there have been notes that said that University Health has a website now where you can sign up to get in line. You have to have an appointment. You may have noticed on the news recently that in some states there's been lines and people have been in lines for 8 hours and so out there in the cold. So it's much better if you pre-register and then get an appointment. So at University Health, if you go to the website, that is wecandoitsa.com. That's wecandoitsa.com. wecandoitsa.com. And you can pre-register for their vaccines. Those are the Moderna vaccines. If you remember the two different types, we have the Moderna vaccine, which is more easily stored. It doesn't have to have liquid nitrogen temperatures to store it. And the Pfizer vaccine. They're both, according to the vaccine experts, very effective. One of the things you need to know if you're going to get the vaccine is what to expect. In our limited experience, more people have a reaction to this vaccine than to the flu shot. So I view it more as akin to the new shingles shot. With that, a fair number of people get a sore arm for several days. They might have flu-like illness. So just like with that vaccine, with the COVID vaccine, if you're planning on getting it, don't plan a whole lot for the next couple of days. It's likely your arm is going to be sore. You might get a headache. You might feel flu-like, achy. You might have malaise, just not have any energy. Some people run a fever, and some people feel sicker than that. In our limited experience, some of the people who have already had COVID seem to get sicker, but we need to see if that plays out nationally. So if you're not sure, just wait a little while and let's see how everybody else is doing before you get the vaccine. But for the most part, most people, as long as you're aware that you may need a couple of days to experience the effects of the vaccine, which is your body making what it needs to make, which is antibodies, and activate your immune cells against the protein that is being made by the messenger RNA in the vaccine. As long as you know that it's going to take a couple of days for your body to do that, but then you'll get over that, that's good. There's been very few people who had really severe reactions to that. Anaphylactic shock is now a good thing. So who should not get the vaccine? It's mainly the people who are allergic to some component of the vaccine. And the main one that they think is a culprit in these two new vaccines is polyethylene glycol. So you may not know if you've ever had that in a previous vaccine, but basically if you have had problems with previous vaccines, then you need to certainly discuss the issue with your practitioner and see if getting the vaccine is appropriate for you. So there's another spot that you can go. This past week, a lot of people were calling to say that they heard that HEB pharmacy in San Antonio had the vaccines. So the Texas Department of Health and Human Services has a website. I will spell this out, but again, I'm going to post this information on a website that we created so that you don't have to remember all this stuff. Our new website is called www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. That's www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. And we'll post these links on there so that you don't have to write them down in case you're driving around listening to us. But anyway, here it is. This is where you can get a map to see who in the San Antonio area, or actually in the whole state of Texas, has vaccine and how many doses they might have. Interestingly, like in the last week, HEB got some vaccine, but they only were able to have about 100 doses in each store, and of course they went very quickly. So here's that link. It's that's bit.ly/2, capital J, lowercase v, P as in Paul, R, U, and the number 3. Or, if you want to have it spelled out, it's dss.tx.us/coronavirus/immunize/vaccine.aspx. So I will repeat that again, and then if you want to go to the website, it'll be easier to get it there. But again, dss.state.tx.us/coronavirus/immunize/vaccine.aspx. And that is for a map of who are the providers in Texas that will presently have the vaccine, and then you can call them and see if you can get in line and get the application signed. Now, a note when you're signing the application, it does tell you that the vaccine is not FDA approved, and some people are surprised at that, but it has been given emergency use authorization, which is different. Emergency use authorization just means that they haven't had a chance to fully study it, but it looks like it's probably okay. So another thing that has received, that is not FDA approved, is ozone therapy. So we're going to talk a little bit about ozone therapy in a moment, but I just want to emphasize that like ozone therapy has been around for 50 years in Russia, 30 years in the United States, and they still haven't done FDA approval for that. But the vaccine has only been around for 6 months, and that doesn't have FDA approval, and yet everybody thinks it's a great thing. There's a lot of unknowns about the vaccine. There's a lot of unknowns about the virus. One of the things that's unknown about the virus is the new strain. You know, the new strain has a change in the spike protein. Well, both of these vaccines are making messenger RNA to a component of the spike protein, and it is assumed that it is a basic enough part of the spike protein that it will still work for this new strain, which is more contagious, but doesn't seem to be as virulent, as dangerous. So it remains to be seen how well it protects you. Something to think about. If you are anxious to get the vaccine, and I know a lot of people are, and some people are just saying, well, we'll kind of wait and take our chances. But what else can you do in the interim? So I've been very intrigued with the East Virginia Medical School consortium led by Paul Merrick, MD. And we'll put this link on our webpage as well. But if you go to evms.edu/COVID-care, that's East Virginia Medical School is where that is. So evms.edu/COVID-care, and you can download the latest EVMS Critical Care COVID-19 Protocol. That is a 41-page document presently. They update it about every 2 weeks with what they think is the best treatment for COVID as a prevention, if you just get it and you're an outpatient, and even if you go in the hospital, it's a guide for physicians as well. So there's a drug that they list there that I wanted to mention, and it's called Ivermectin. So Ivermectin is an anti-parasitic drug that's been around for at least 30 years. So we know a lot about it. They used it a lot in Africa to get rid of onychosarcoidosis. It's a problem with a leading cause of river blindness, or it's a cause of river blindness in Africa. But this drug has pretty well eradicated that. And so when they were giving it to a lot of people in Africa, they asked, sometimes you would give it to somebody and then you find out they're pregnant, or you were giving it to somebody who was breastfeeding. So they found out that it doesn't seem to cause any trouble with breastfeeding or in pregnant women. And it doesn't really have much side effects unless you already have a parasite in you. But what they did find with several studies, they get more and more studies on this drug every day. And most of this data came out after Halloween. So in early November is when they started proposing that we use ivermectin as a prophylaxis for high-risk individuals, or if you were recently exposed to COVID-19, you could take this, and according to the authors of this document, you will not get sick, is what they say. We'll post a 9-minute video. Some of you may have seen it on some of the news channels. That was by Dr. Pierre Corey from the University of Wisconsin, and he's pleading with a subcommittee of the Senate to try and get the NIH to at least mention this. You kind of wonder why Dr. Fauci hasn't mentioned this. Everybody's just talking about the vaccine and that's it. But their protocol is interesting. And what I like about it is some of it is basic nutritional health. Several of the things on there include vitamin D. I think vitamin D is extremely important for your immunity. And they have that listed. Also vitamin C. Many of you already know that vitamin C seems to help us be able to fight off diseases. They also have 2 items. One is quercetin, which not very many people seem to know much about. It's a plant polyphenol that seems to push zinc into the cell. And if you push the zinc into the cell, the zinc is antiviral. So they have the quercetin and the zinc listed there, and then they use melatonin. So melatonin was found during the Ebola crisis to help avert the cytokine storm. You may have heard that some of the people who are dying in the hospital are dying because their body starts such an over-exuberant response to the virus that it actually has collateral damage and kills the lung of the patient or damages the lung of the patient. And then the lung produces very thick mucus and you can't get oxygen through there, and so they basically kind of drown. That's why they're trying to get different oxygen ways into them. But at any rate, so the melatonin, they found that it helped to prevent the cytokine storm in Ebola, and it seems to help prevent the cytokine storm with COVID-19 as well. So I will post this on our website. Again, that would be www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. And you can kind of look at it. Now, just because you have this, your doctor may not prescribe the ivermectin. Ivermectin is a prescription. Of course, you can get the vitamin D, vitamin C, quercetin, zinc, and melatonin over the counter, but if your doctor hasn't heard of the ivermectin, is not familiar with it, is not comfortable with it, if you download that other article that I told you about earlier under evms.edu/COVIDcare, it has strategies that you can use if your doctor doesn't want to prescribe it. Maybe you can give them that document and say, hey, can you read this? Give me your opinion. If you think it's safe, I'd like to do it. So what I'm doing in my office until we get full immunized is on the ivermectin. So I've had probably 5 doses. I'm taking a dose every week. It's based on your weight, and it's kind of hard to find at some of the pharmacies here in the States because we don't have a whole lot of parasites here, so they're not used to keeping it here. What we're kind of hoping is that the NIH does accept this, or at least as a maybe emergency use authorization. Again, the FDA could maybe do that. But if it does, it's going to be even harder to find. So we're hoping that the pharmacies are going to be ramping up the availability of this ivermectin, because it should help be a bridge and allay the anxiety that a lot of us have right now. It's like, wow, there's a vaccine out there, but how come I can't get it? I'm low on the list of when I get to get it. But if we could get the ivermectin for a while, and then we can see that the vaccine is safe, and then get enough people vaccinated, then we're out of the woods. And I really feel like by the summertime, life is going to be getting a lot back closer to normal. So let's change tacks now. What we're going to do is think about how come with COVID, the United States has the most deaths per capita than any other country except, I think, Brazil. I mean, we spend, we're number one in healthcare expenditures in the world, and yet I think we're supposed to be like 28th in healthcare. And you wonder why that is. My feeling is that, the keys for health, and we'll go over this a lot over the series in the radio show, is good sleep, good nutrition, regular exercise, detoxify, and de-stress. So let's just briefly think about those. How many people are getting good sleep in this country? I can't tell you how many people come into my office and they say they're not sleeping, and you find out, well, what are you doing? Well, I roll over and I feel like I can't sleep, so I look at my phone. Once you look at your phone, you just blasted out your melatonin. Your melatonin is produced in the dark. And so if you look at your phone, you kind of knocked out one of the natural things that helps you to get down into good sleep. So while iPhones, cell phones are an amazing invention, you really need to be able to disengage and turn them off at night for you to get the good sleep. We'll talk a lot more about sleep in future radio shows because it is so, so important. And we'll talk about melatonin. I'll try to get an expert about melatonin to talk on the show. We actually have one here in San Antonio. So what about nutrition? Well, what'd you have for breakfast? Did you have some multicolored fruits and vegetables? That's where you get all the micronutrients that help you to drive your Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle is where you make all your energy. And you need energy for healing, for immunity, for repair, and what's left over is how energetic you feel. So if you don't have any energy, it's probably related to the food that you're eating. Also, if you eat a whole lot of fried foods, unfortunately, the oil that they fry foods in gets absorbed into some of the lining of your mitochondria. And we'll talk about mitochondria as we go along. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of your cell, And if you put the wrong building blocks in the powerhouse of your cell, it cannot make energy like it needs to. So you will not have as much energy to repair. There'll be your body, if you feel like you're getting older, your knees aren't working as well, you can't rebuild the knees unless you have energy. And if you're eating French fries every day, that could be a problem. So we'll go over that as well. And there's several, the other factors: detoxify, de-stress. I mean, gosh, we got all kinds of toxins in our environment. We're going to talk about chelation in further episodes, because I think that is a real key for longevity as well. And de-stress, my gosh, we got so much stress. I mean, this year, with the election, we had riots, we had the whole COVID thing. You really found out what was important in life when it was taken away from you, be it going to church, just even hugging somebody. We really need to have a support group. We need to have people we can talk to, and we need institutions like churches and counselors and things like that where we can de-stress regularly. So all those things are really important for keeping our energy going. I want to talk about where do we get energy. So you get it from your food. And the food, where does this food get it? From the sun. So ultimately, the sun is kind of the source of most of this energy. It's transformed with photosynthesis into the food. The food gets into us, and then we're able to break that down and get the energy out of it. And then what do we do with it? So the food powers our muscles. The muscles are made of actin and myosin fibers. Basically, they slide back and forth and they shed electrons, and the electrons drive the Krebs cycle, and that's what produces your energy. So if you're not exercising, you're not going to be making much energy. So what do you do if you've got bad knees or you just had surgery and you can't do any exercise? How can you get more energy into your system? So this brings us back to our Ozone Clinic. Again, this is sponsored by O3 Plus LLC, and this is a clinic that we formed 5 years ago, and the address is 12001 Network Boulevard, Suite 314, San Antonio, Texas 78249. Now, if you're not in San Antonio, KTSA has a very wide distribution, and we have patients coming up to see us from Corpus, from the Valley, from Austin, all over the place. Why do they come to us? Because my nurse practitioner, Kim Engelman, probably knows the most about ozone of anybody in the South Texas area. If you look on our website for ozone, which is www.o3plustx.com. That's O3plustx.com. You're going to learn a lot more about what we do over there. It's not just ozone. We also have IV therapies. We have IV nutrient therapies. We have pulsed electromagnetic field. We have ISIS microcurrent neurofeedback, which is excellent for post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit disorder, kind of retrains the brain in a non-pharmaceutical fashion. Kind of the idea is not to have to take so many drugs. So if we can do things that heal you without having to take so many drugs, that's really what our whole goal is. But at any rate, back to if you can't exercise, you could come into our clinic and get ozone therapy. Now, let's talk a little bit about ozone. Ozone is a triatomic oxygen. That means it's 3 oxygens stuck together. So right now when you're breathing air that is mostly nitrogen, but it's got about 20% oxygen. It's interesting, it used to be 21% when I was in medical school, which, by the way, was in 1983 to 1986. I graduated in 1983, and residency was 1986. But at any rate, the oxygen level in the world has declined slightly by 1%. So that's not a good thing, I guess, for a couple thousand years from here. But right now we still have enough oxygen in the air. So how does it turn into ozone in nature? Well, you got a lightning storm, and the lightning energy makes some of the oxygen molecules, which are O2, bang together, and some of them stick and they become O3. They absorb that extra energy from the lightning and they become O3. And that is the pleasant smell that you smell when there's a thunderstorm coming, and it comes down in the rain. So the rainwater has been ozonated by the lightning. And what does it do to nature? It bathes it. It helps to detoxify it. It kills off bacteria. It's kind of God's way to bathe the universe, or at least the earth, and keep us a little cleaner. Otherwise, the bacteria and the viruses and the fungi would all take over. So fortunately, ozone doesn't really have any known resistance by bacteria, viruses, fungi. But there's certain ways that we can get it. When you smell it, that's how they got the name ozone, ozone. It's, I think, from Germany. It means a smell. And when it comes, the only place that ozone is not safe to have medically is when you breathe it in, if you breathe it in a high concentration. So let's go over the history of ozone a little bit. Let me turn my computer on here again. Okay. There we go. All right. So ozone has been known for, back in the 1800s at least. And let's see if I can get this working. Here we go. Okay. Okay. The history of ozone. Actually, you've heard of Tesla. Nikola Tesla patented the first ozone generator in 1896. And he was the first to ozonate olive oil, and we use ozonated oils for different things as well. Believe it or not, in 1885, the Florida Medical Association published the first textbook on the medical applications of ozone. So how come we didn't learn about it in medical school? Well, when antibiotics came out, everybody kind of turned to those because they really were miracle drugs at the time. But unfortunately, over the years, we have gotten a lot more resistance to antibiotics. And so we're starting to look back at some of these more natural things, ultraviolet light, ozone, and different things that seem to be becoming much more effective and important as we get more and more resistant to antibiotics. But anyway, the different ways of doing ozone, actually in the United States, we started the American Academy of Ozone Therapy by Dr. Frank Schallenberger. He learned about ozone over in Europe by Dr. Hansler, I believe. But anyway, you may know about Dr. Schallenberger. He's the one who taught us how to do the ozone and everything. And the key, if you're going to go get ozone therapy, is make sure you have a trained practitioner. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about how to do home ozone. Ozone can be dangerous in certain ways, and as I mentioned before, it is not FDA approved. Your doctor may not even know anything about it. One of my goals with this radio show also, and with other things, is to help people become more aware of all the benefits of ozone therapy in so many different ways. So how are some of the ways that we use it? Again, so the ozone, when we have to make it, we're making medical ozone. So you take an oxygen tank, we run the ozone through a ozone generator, which basically is two charged plates that add that energy to the oxygen, just like the lightning does, and you get ozone. Now, ozone is relatively unstable and will disassociate back into regular, or they call it dismutate, back into regular oxygen in about 20 minutes. And that's why probably the pharmaceutical industry isn't very interested in it, because you can't make any money on it. It's relatively inexpensive to make, and you can't store it. So you can't just put it in a pill and give it to everybody. You have to make it in the clinic. So let's say again that you have a bad knee and you need more energy for healing, or say you're going to have a surgery. They found in Cuba, they did a lot of research in Cuba. They've done ozone in Cuba for at least 30 years. They found that if they pre-treated animals with ozone therapy before they had surgery, they cut the post-op days afterwards. I mean, they recovered much faster. So it helps with healing. It helps fight bacteria. It's excellent to use with antibiotics. Again, I think the whole key is complementary medicine. It's not just alternative medicine. It's not just traditional medicine. If we can finally get everybody working on the same page, it all works better when we work together. But at any rate, so in our clinic, we have a lot of people coming in for what they call major autohemotherapy. Now, what that is a form of IV ozone. So we put an IV in you. We drain some of your blood into a bag, and then we put the bag upright and we bubble ozone into your blood. And the extra energy that is in the ozone is captured by your plasma, and it becomes what they call ozonides. Ozonides can last as long as 3 months in your body. So that's how you can get the benefit of the ozone. Now, the very first time you get ozone in your body, it's an oxidant. And you've always heard, oh, we don't want to have oxidants in your body. But if you have a controlled dose of an oxidant, it is kind of like working out with weights and trying to build muscles. The first time you do your weights, your muscles get tired and you may tear some of the muscles down, but then they build back stronger and better than they were before. And that's the way that we envision that ozone works. You get a little bit of an oxidative stress to your body, and your body responds by pouring out antioxidant enzyme systems, revving up your antioxidant enzyme systems. But the beauty of ozone is that it does it in a balanced way. You know, sometimes when you take a pharmaceutical like a drug, it's so powerful and it's not natural, and it goes too far one direction. Let's take an example, like if you have rheumatoid arthritis and you're going to take a really strong medicine to suppress your immune response. You know, with rheumatoid arthritis, the problem is that your immune system has determined that the lining of your joints is foreign and it's going to attack it. So obviously we want to modulate that down, but sometimes the drugs that you take, they just totally knock down your immune system, and that's why you see the warnings on TV, warning you might be more susceptible to tuberculosis and other infections. But the nice part about ozone is it modulates it. So it brings your immune system back down to a more normal level without getting rid of the ability for you to fight infections. So that's one of our main uses of ozone is major autohemotherapy. We have people coming in there for either for energy, if they can't exercise. We have a lot of people coming in there and getting ozone every week or two to help prevent COVID. Now, I can't say that it actually prevents it because we don't have the double-blind controlled trials to say that. But we know from studies in Cuba and elsewhere that it does ramp up your immune system, and it should help you to stay healthier, and we hope that that will help you to avoid COVID and other infections. We haven't had anybody who's getting regular ozone come down with COVID, but that's a small group of folks, and you can't say that that could be generalized to the general public. But anyway, certainly those people are feeling better. We know a lot of things that the ozone does besides keeping away COVID. You know, oxygen is your most critical nutrient, and it's the utilization of your oxygen that actually helps you to stay young. If you look at the main feature of people getting older, it is decreased oxygen utilization. So you can breathe the air in, you got your oxygen coming in, but if you can't use it, then you will slow down in all your processes. So again, what we need to do is keep your mitochondria working strong and being able to utilize the oxygen. So of course, we've got to get it in, so you have to have good lungs. But once it gets in, then how do we be able to use it? what would be some signs if you couldn't use oxygen? Well, you'd be short of breath when you try to work out. You might have sensitivity to the cold. You might have more chronic disease, weakness, fatigue, generalized pain. So all those things can be helped by ozone. And, you know, a lot of people have said, well, how can one thing help all those different disease processes? And it's because it actually it increases the NAD to NADH ratio. Now, we'll talk about that later, but NAD is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. It is a derivative of vitamin B3, and it's very important for your energy production. So the published effects of ozonides, let's go with that. One of the things that it does is increases the oxygen delivery to your tissues. It makes your red blood cells more distensible. So if you've already got some clogged arteries, your red blood cells can't get through there as well if they're stiff. But the ozone is known to make the red blood cells a little more pliable so they can get in there. We already talked about increasing your cytokine production, but in a modulated way so you don't have a cytokine storm. It increases your antioxidant buffering capacity. It is antibacterial, especially for anaerobes because it's carrying around oxygen, and anaerobes don't like oxygen. It's antifungal, antiviral, and another thing that it does is increase NRF2. So nuclear regulatory factor 2 is a master regulator of cytoprotection. It increases detoxification, regulates production of phase 2 enzymes, enhances stability and turnover of proteins, reduces inflammation, protects against neurodegeneration, is anti-tumorigenic, and it promotes apoptosis, which is killing off your slow cells, and it promotes longevity. So another thing that will help you with longevity is your diet. So we're going to change gears a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about we're going over a lot of things. And so what I encourage you to do is call our office. Again, that's 210-558-7778 and get an appointment with Kim Engelman, my nurse practitioner, and she can help see your individual needs and which of our different modalities can help you with health and longevity. But one of the other things that I wanted to talk about today, and it looks like we got about 12 minutes or so left, is the Prolon diet. Now, we mentioned that diet is super important, and here we are in the new year, and everybody wants to lose weight so they look better, and most of the diets last, about 4 days, and then it's like, forget that, I'm going back to what I had before. But I want to emphasize some of the research that's been done on diets. Now, the Prolon diet, Prolon, is a diet that was developed by Dr. Walter Longo. Let me see where I put this information. Here it is. Okay, so his first name is Valter, last name Longo, and he's a PhD at the Longevity Institute at the University of Southern California. Now, this guy has gotten over $36 million in grants from the NIH and the National Institute on Aging and the Department of Defense for his breakthrough discoveries on how the body ages and the effect of nutrition on aging and age-related chronic diseases. Now, if you're like me, I'm about 62, and I'm not interested in getting Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cardiac disease, cancer, or diabetes. So what could I do today to help avoid the possibility of getting all those things? And that is what Dr. Longo has found. It turns out that in the U.S., again, you're wondering why are we dying so fast compared to other people? It's mostly our food and that we have too much of it. So what he found was that intermittent fasting was really, really important. It seems like if your body doesn't have enough food, it thinks it's going to starve, and so it sets into play a number of processes where it gets rid of all your old cells and tries to make you the best possible version you can be, because if not, you're going to die. Imagine if you came out from hibernation and you were a caveman and you didn't have any food. If you don't get food, you're going to die, and so your body actually rebuilds itself to be as good as it can be, because otherwise you're going extinct. And that's kind of what they found in the animals, and then they have proven this in humans. But the problem is, we don't like fasting. They tried to have people fast for 5 days, and the compliance rate was really, really low. So what he wanted to do was figure out, what else could we do? Is there a way we can kind of trick the body to think that it is fasting, get the same benefits of fasting, and yet you didn't feel like you were starving all week? And that's what the Prolon diet is. So there's a website. If you go, and I'll put this on our website as well, but if you go to www.prolonfast.com, that's PROLONFAST.com, and you can buy this diet there. What it is a box of food for 5 days, and it costs about $200. We have it at our Ozone Clinic if you want to buy it there. But the main thing is, I want you to think about doing something like this, because what Dr. Longo found was that if you would do this for 1 week of the first 3 months of every year, you probably wouldn't get cancer. You probably would, if you have diabetes, it'd probably go away. And you probably, if you started with some neurodegeneration of your brain, you may be able to reverse that. And here's why. What happened when they did this diet for 3 consecutive months, and again, it's a 5-day diet, body weight decreased, abdominal fat decreased. Now, why is that important? Because abdominal fat turns out to be extremely inflammatory. That may be a big contributor. You know, you see these guys who have a big, big belly, they tend to be our higher risk for cardiovascular disease, because all that fat there is making a lot of inflammation. So anyway, that fat goes down, waist circumference goes down, your lean body mass goes up, so you don't lose muscle, you gain muscle actually. Insulin growth factor goes down, so that's because you're using less sugar, and that also is less of a trigger for cancer cells. Your blood pressure goes down. So if you're tired of taking a bunch of pills for blood pressure, this is a way to help get off of it. Your cholesterol was more or less the same. Your C-reactive protein went down, so your inflammation in your whole body went down. But here's the best part. Your stem cells jumped up on day 4 and day 5. So why do we need a stem cell? If you're going to have this apoptosis where you're killing off your body is naturally killing off its slow cells, its less efficient cells. Now you need to bump up and make new cells. And so to do that, you need stem cells. Now you could go out and spend thousands of dollars and have an infusion of stem cells, but you've still got your own stem cells, and it makes more sense to do it the natural way. This is the way that, humans have evolved over the years to handle stress and difficulties. We need stem cells to rebuild ourselves. If you have an injury, the stem cells rebuild it. And if you have neurodegeneration, what they're finding is that people with early Parkinson's, early Alzheimer's, if they can go on this type of a diet, and then we'll talk more about Alzheimer's in another edition, but get on either a ketogenic type diet for most of the way. But in Dr. Longo's experiments, they just went on a Mediterranean diet, which you probably have heard about. We'll talk about that later as well. But anyway, what it is, it's not the standard American diet, which I love the abbreviation of SAD, Standard American Diet, because it is sad because it's killing us. So we need to make a big change in our diets. And here we are at the beginning of the year. This is when we need to be thinking about these things. So, again, how can you find the Prolon diet? I will post this on this radio show website, which is called drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. So, again, www.drfrankcuttingedgemedicine.com. Also, you can go to our Ozone Clinic website, www.o3plustx.com, o3plustexas.com, or go directly to the Prolon site, www.prolonfast.com. And look it over. If you're not sure, why don't you go by our clinic and look at the box. I've done this probably 3 times. I'm going to do it starting tomorrow. So this week I will be doing the diet. I'll report back next week and let you know how it went. The very first time I did it, I lost 8 pounds. Second time I did it, I lost 5 pounds. But it is really interesting how much time you have when you're not spending your whole day eating. The meals are small. It's about 1,000 calories a day, but each nutrient in the diet is specifically evaluated by Dr. Longo and his team to know that it's not going to screw up your production of these stem cells. You will get ketotic, which is a good thing. That means you're starting to burn fat, usually by about the 3rd day, and then on the 4th and 5th day, you will dump out a lot of stem cells. Now, an important note, if you're on a bunch of medicines, you need to run this by your physician first and make sure they approve of it, or they can guide you through it. If you're a diabetic on insulin, you need to be very careful with this diet. Your blood sugar will go down because you're not going to be eating sugar. So it's important that you keep all those things in mind. Again, I am not going to be your physician. I am your advisor, and I want you to talk all these things over with your doctor and see what they think about it. I hope in the future to be getting some of the local leaders in a lot of different fields on this show. And we're not just going to do complementary alternative medicine. We're going to do traditional medicine as well. In my years of practice, again, I've been here in San Antonio since 1983 was my medical degree, and 1986 was residency. And we've just learned a lot, and we've gotten to know a lot of the specialists here in the San Antonio area. And there's a lot of really smart people, and I want to be able to share their information with you, and that's the whole purpose of this show. Cutting-edge medicine, I certainly don't know everything there is to know. I'm anxious to learn, and I want you to be learning with me as we go through these next few months. Again, in order for this show to continue, you have to support my Ozone Clinic, because that's who's paying for it. So if as we go along, if you hear about some of the disease processes that our Ozone Clinic can help you with, be sure and send them our way. Again, Kim Engelman, my nurse practitioner, is very skilled at figuring out what therapies will help them. And as long as the Ozone Therapy continues, then I can continue to do this radio show. And if it's not somebody it's not you who has the problem or somebody in your family, you'll probably hear about somebody in your circle of friends or your work who has a problem, and at least refer them our way. And then encourage everybody to listen to this show. Again, we will continue to be on KTSA. That is 550 AM, 107.1 AM, or online at ktsa.com. Eventually, we'll get a podcast going so that you can listen to previous editions of this. And I want to thank, again, all the people who have helped me get into a position where we can do this and share this information with you. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Again, I want to thank Dr. Ed Staffel for being the pioneer on this type of radio show, and my Uncle Bill for helping me learn all about ozone, and certainly my patients and staff, my wife, and all the people at O3 Plus who helped me. So without further ado, I think we'll start to sign off here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about dementia. I've had several patients recently being diagnosed with dementia, and it's a sad diagnosis, except that there is new hope on the horizon. We're going to discuss The End of Alzheimer's, which is the book by Dr. Dale Bredesen, Bredesen. That'll be next week. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, be sure you get out there and spread the love of God with everybody. Everybody has something to contribute, and we all are in it together. All right, we all have a blessed day, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.